The Family Foundation is targeted on a list of so-called national hate groups. What was our supposed crime? Simply taking a stance for parental rights at school board meetings and the General Assembly. Meanwhile, leftists try to shut down parents at a local school board using that same hate group label. We'll tell you all about it. Welcome to Speak Up, Virginia, equipping you to speak up on the life, family, and freedom issues that matter most to you. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candi Cushman, with our president, Victoria Cobb. Well, welcome, everybody. Glad to have you with us for Speak Up, Virginia. And before we get into our really intense topics, I just had to bring up another news item on AI. And I'm just going to say right off the bat, Victoria thinks I talk about AI way too much.
I like AI. I know we bring it up here on this show a fair amount, but I mean, it is interesting and it is the most constantly changing item we ever talk about.
I can't help it. It's so fascinating. I'm hoping this latest news item that we're going to talk about might help alleviate some anxiety that AI is ready to take over the world at any moment, because apparently maybe we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. And I just want to know, have you heard about this whole thing with McDonald's trying to use AI in their drive-thru, to do their drive-thru orders?
No, but honestly, it sounds like it's about to be a bad joke. Like it's yeah, I don't know. Go ahead. Tell me about it.
So what's going on is McDonald's decided to test this at several locations across the United States. And it's been a bit of a disaster. You have people posting their experience on TikTok and stuff. And I just had to share some of this because it's hilarious. So you can see here, AI apparently turned a side order of fries into over 2,000 chicken McNuggets.
Did somebody actually get handed like that?
Well, no, they didn't.
Hopefully
make
the
it
humans
to the window.
decided there was a problem once it actually. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, it's just gotta be, can I have fries with that? It's got to be the most expensive steak, but it's like over $200. So you can see that we're flashing.
The prices
that up
are going up. There's been a lot of articles about McDonald's and struggling with people not coming because their prices have gone up. Okay, that's not what you're hitting though.
Well, and this other poor guy, he got a side of bacon added on with his ice cream cone.
Okay, pause. I didn't realize McDonald's made bacon, but I guess
I know.
Maybe they have a bacon cheeseburger, but can you really have a side of bacon at McDonald's?
Creative.
I don't eat there very often, so maybe I'm out of touch.
All right, so we're just going to let you hear the bacon ice cream order conversation.
You added bacon to my ice cream. I don't want bacon.
What else can I get for you?
Where's nothing?
What else? Your new total is $5.83. Please hold.
I don't want.
Thank you.
I don't want 3 ice cream cones. I only want 2.
So like I said, it was pretty much a disaster. They had to stop this test, at least for now. And I just think it's kind of funny that AI got fired in favor of the humans.
All right, well, okay, so now I'm going to make this a little too serious because I know you're trying to have fun here, but why are they doing AI, right? You walk up and you already have touch screens when you go into McDonald's. You don't need to order from a person at the register. But here's the problem. They're even trying to get rid of the drive-thru people. Why? Go to California. What did they do? $20 an hour minimum wage. This is what happens. You start trying to force AI to replace human beings. We already have machines when you walk in, but now they're trying to replace even the people that receive the orders in the drive-thru because, frankly, they can't afford the workers. They passed that law, I think it was in September or something in California, for example, and they lost 9,500 workers out of the fast food industry alone. So this is what's happening. We're going to get these AI things because we literally are forcing out human beings. Anyway, I know you're trying to be funny. It is pathetic about the bacon, and it is funny, but
Victoria
I'm just
help but go to policy.
I'm sorry. It's terrible, but this is the world we're headed towards.
Yeah.
And I'll say one more thing. And I know we're supposed to be relieving the concern that AI is going to take over our jobs, but I actually sent our law center an article about how somebody had AI process all these Supreme Court hearings. So they went through all the briefs and tried to decide. Yes, they basically let AI try to figure out what the right thing, and they said basically AI came up with the same thing the Supreme Court came up with most of the time. So it might actually not work on the low-end jobs, the jobs that maybe aren't as high-skilled, but apparently it's done some pretty good legal analysis. So maybe it depends what kind of job you have, whether you're going to have AI take over.
All I know is that it didn't save any time or efficiency because they had to bring the humans back in to correct the mistakes.
Yes.
So, okay. All right. Well, getting into our more urgent and intense topics for the day. The Family Foundation has received what I consider actually to be a great badge of honor, and that is we have been added to a national list of so-called hate groups. Now, this list is put out every year by the Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC for short. Tell us what's going on, Victoria.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll just put up on the screen a map here of the so-called hate groups that the Southern Poverty Law Center has charted across the U.S. And as you can see, the Family Foundation of Virginia is listed as one of them. And so there's kind of these, red
Dots everywhere.
and then you can and you can kind of see it below. And honestly, I'm a little surprised we haven't gotten listed prior to this, given that our work has been the same for 40 years and almost 40 years, and it's been pretty controversial the whole time. But nevertheless, we are now on this list. It's a little bit of a badge of honor because we're on with a lot of groups that we also would say are not hate groups, but do actually very effective work, like Family Research Council, Alliance Defending Freedom, American Family Association. So basically, groups that are having huge impact in protecting people of faith and kind of handling all of the agendas that are moving against our freedoms. So now what's unfortunate is what they're trying to do is smear these groups, us and these other groups, by putting us on a list with groups that are, I think most people would say, pretty awful. So groups like the KKK, Ku Klux Klan, or the neo-Nazi kinds of groups. You can see even in the list that we put up there, some groups that do have some concerning, to say the least, issues. And so what's really problematic about this is there are a lot of charity groups that give donations, community foundations, and other types of things that actually blacklist groups that show up on this list. And so what we've seen is basically this list becomes kind of the feeder for lots of other actions that happen. So people use it to base their decisions on. And we've even seen the government, specifically the FBI and our own Justice Department, targeting faith-based groups that are on this list.
Yeah. It's like a litmus test, or like the list for cancel culture,
Yes.
Now, people might remember, speaking of the government action, people might remember when the FBI memo came out that targeted traditional Catholics, and that was leaked right out of our Richmond, Virginia bureau, apparently. Well, it turns out that whole thing, they used SPLC resources as a source for that memo. Of course, we remember when the DOJ labeled parents as possible terrorists, parents at school board meetings, which is ridiculous. But look at this. I mean, groups like Moms for Liberty are now on this SPLC hate list. So you kind of, it's no surprise when the DOJ and the FBI are targeting groups like this, when, they're kind of creating this catalog.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Parents groups definitely kind of entered the space this year. You can see it in a number of groups. And I think the thing that blows my mind is this is a private entity that just created a list, right? I mean, like, essentially, this is not a government screened thing. There's really no substance to this. If I thought it was as easy to just create a list and say, these are all the bad guys, like the people we don't like, here's everybody on the left that you can't, and you just label them a hate group, and then
don't fund them.
Don't
let
fund
them
them.
have
The fact that
advertising.
this thing has caught on and that groups actually use it as a legitimate sourcing document is kind of mind-boggling to me.
That's a good point. Well, I just want to follow up on the charitable part of this, because a lot of people will remember Amazon's Smile program that allowed you, when you made a purchase, to designate for a portion of that to go to a charity of your choice. Well, Amazon actually had used this hate list to exclude charities from that program. So you are, reaching some pretty high-profile programs out there. And I want to mention this other program that you actually called my attention to, called the Hate is Not Charitable campaign, to, quote, ensure no funding flows to organizations identified as hate groups. So this is apparently made up of more than 20 donor networks, foundations. They represent over $1 billion in assets. And, that's a pretty significant cancel operation right there. It's being run by something called Amalgamated, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right,
Amalgamated, yeah.
Foundation. And, okay, just take a wild guess what their sourcing is.
Yes, again, this silly list created by a private organization that just decides who's in and who's out.
Yeah, I mean, it's right there on their website, believe it or not. They list the Poverty Law Center right there on their website. Victoria, how does that hurt pro-family groups like ours and other groups, religious freedom groups.
Well, I can already, if Amazon Smile stops letting us get funds, I'll be honest, like my own shopping has been, and I'm just one family, but I know our family overspends on Amazon. So, you just start there. But also these community foundations, a lot of times donors that give through typically they're localized community foundations. So it's people need to kind of check when you give that way, are they blocking out SPLC groups? Certain donor advised funds used to look at it. So it's really very incumbent on our supporters to actually check the mechanisms. You think, oh, I just give my money through Fidelity, whatever, and I'm picking on Fidelity. I literally don't know that they use this list. But that's one of the concerns. So it really puts us at a disadvantage because we're getting blocked out by people who actually want to give to us. But because of the means through which they give, all of a sudden it's like their gift has to stop and go somewhere else.
So they're not only blocking big foundation type or, pressuring them, but also making it hard for, the average mom and dad to support Family Foundation. Like you talked about with Smile. Now that program, I do think they discontinued that, but still other things that are out there, web-based giving. We've mentioned before we had our whole database canceled out at one point. So let me back up and get you to tell us, or let's talk about what put us on this map in the first place. Because to your point that you made earlier about it being a smear campaign, people need to realize they're putting groups like Alliance Defending Freedom, Family Foundation of Virginia, right there with the KKK, with the skinheads.
I saw this Wolves of Vinland, and I had to look it up, and that looks like, now you're taking the Wikipedia description of what it does, but I literally was like, what is this group? And looked it up, and I don't want to be on a list with that group if Wikipedia is accurate, So you sit there and think it's really terrible to kind of take all these groups, blend them together. Now, what it says under ours, like if you see under ours, it says anti-LGBT, and so that's kind of, I guess, their
that's why we're on
description.
there.
But it goes further, and it basically says, if you click on that, it gives an explanation that basically amounts to any group that dares to speak out against things like, for example, drag queen story hours or parental rights when school boards are pushing the LGBTQ explanation or experimentation under a kid. All this stuff that's happening, kind of this agenda that's going to our kids. If you're fighting against that, or even for the protection of girls' sports, then that puts you square in the anti-LGBTQ box. They also don't have plus, but we talked about that on one. We won't get into that, but they look short on some letters. But that's a side point. Anyway, they ran out of space, I guess. So anyway, so that basically, guilty as charged. We hit, I guess, all of those. We don't believe in any of that. We don't think that that's productive for our kids.
And let's just contrast here the word hate group with what we're actually doing.
This is not about the people. This is about the agenda. And they just won't ever distinguish those two things.
Our policy guy, myself, we're going up there, whether it's a board meeting, school board meeting, or General Assembly, and we're simply saying respect parents' rights.
Correct.
There's not any hate in that.
Correct.
Yeah, it's just that it clashes with the trans radical ideology.
Correct. The best thing they ever did on their side was try to confuse the issues of an agenda with trying to say that this is somehow harmful to the individual, that if you don't accept everything that they want, you are hateful towards people. And that is just not what it is. And unfortunately, all we're trying to do is defend a parent's right to be able to direct the education of their child, to expose their child at an appropriate time to things that they deem appropriate, not have the government do that for them.
And you mean the best thing because they exposed their agenda? Would you say the best thing they ever did? Right?
Well, I'm saying it's brilliant strategy on their part. I'm saying
it's
for
actually
them,
brilliant strategy.
Yes, I'm saying for them. If you can confuse disliking an agenda with hating a person, you win. Because that makes us a bunch of haters. It's the most absurd thing. But it was just genius because now you can't speak out in favor of your own child without being a hater of other people's children.
Yeah, and to that point, that is how they are inflating this list of hate groups. Right. So what's so interesting about this is if you look on the website, SPLC claims the number of anti-LGBTQ hate groups has increased by 1/3. And they're kind of hysterical about how they report the whole thing because they're on their
Well, that makes for a good headline. And then more people will cover your list this year because you've now blown it up. But anyway,
because they're saying, quote, this is the highest number of anti-LGBTQ groups SPLC has ever listed, since the beginning of time, I guess.
Like I said, our work hasn't changed. They just finally caught on to it, I guess.
Yeah,
because we've been around for a while.
They could have been reporting on us
maybe
10
we're more
years
effective
ago,
now.
15.
I'd like to think that we're more effective every year. So it could be that. And
well, Okay, so that's another interesting point because on the website, they actually acknowledge the reason that is so much higher. They say this themselves, and that is they've listed all the family policy councils just like us.
Well, it's funny because they missed a few, and I know my peers were kind of like, wait, what about me? Like, I know I do the same stuff, and they're worried about their own effectiveness. So, I mean, they didn't quite get everybody, but apparently they did get a bunch of us, and that upped their number in some ridiculous way. But the bottom line is we've been here doing this work for a long time, and the work is to protect kids, and they're just deciding, like, that makes you hateful. We're going to put you all on this list. I mean, my goodness. I mean, I'm surprised every Speak Up team isn't its own little hate group. Then they could like exponentially, if we had every little area group like Speak Up, Newport News, Speak Up
Chesterfield.
right. I mean,
Yeah,
if you got all, you could add all these different, anyway, all that to say, this is just the reality that they are, trying to sort of dramatize this as if hate has actually grown, which we know it hasn't. Protection of kids might have grown.
Well, I'd like to think one reason they're just waking up to all this is because the parent movement has been effective.
Right.
Specifically, family policy councils, Family Foundation of Virginia has been effective. So now it's on the radar. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen that instead of just working at the state level or at the federal level, we have real parents in these local school boards, and they're speaking out, and they're really disrupting the apple cart. And I think that's really important. I think to have that effective presence all the way down into the people who actually set the policies in your exact local public school, it does make a huge difference. But, this is the bottom line. They're just sort of doing the dirty work of like, we're going to put everybody on the list. And, then it gives the Biden administration or the FBI or, these funding groups sort of like a easy place to just go check if they're on this list. We're going to go after them. And it's really just people that take a biblical stance on sexuality. That's the bottom line.
Well, I do kind of wonder if it's an easy way for them to raise money because, they, like you said, they've got the convenient headline. It's kind of a way to manipulate donors if you can say the hate groups are radically
who wants to fund a hate group, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you fund a group on this list, they can make you sound like you could fund the Family Foundation or you could be funding the Ku Klux Klan, but they're going to make you sound the same. Well, who wants to do that, right? So that's what they're trying to do is with one broad brush, everything that they just don't like, including things that they just happen to disagree with.
Well, and you got to keep picking up more groups, benign groups, because you have to keep making the case that there's a hate pandemic to get your funding.
Correct.
Yeah. I will just quickly mention a little bit about the history of SPLC.
I think I was going to say, we got to get there.
Yeah, because, when they first started out, I think they were trying to do good work, defend impoverished people. Tell us about their history with the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that this was a group that had good intentions at one point, or so it seems, and certainly I think bringing attention to some of these groups and sort of
to real racism,
to real hate, I think served its purpose. But over the last several years, the leadership of SPLC has basically completely been captured by wokeism and left-wing political sexual agendas and so forth. And so basically it now engages in smearing every Christian group that it can kind of get its hands on. And again, it's just a major problem. But I think we also have to get to what has that resulted in, that change, because, we're talking about the funding, but they have had a bigger issue than just the funding issue, which is that FRC experienced what it's like to be on that list. I mean, do you want to mention that?
Yeah, well, on the fund, we're talking about a group that has assets worth over $700 million. So I think the hate pandemic kind of narrative works for them.
Yeah.
But also, I think, ironically, we have this situation where now Christians are experiencing the fear that they are claiming is so widespread. So as a point, in fact, you have Family Research Council. A few years ago, people might remember when they had a shooter come in, and when, the police investigated this shooter and asked why he came in the FRC building, he said, I was going to target all the hate groups on the SPLC list.
Yeah, so literally using that as the source of what you're going to go to do to actual violence, not just even, hate. So, yeah, it's a big issue. So,
It's kind of like they're creating their own they're creating the problem that they're reporting on.
It does kind of seem like that. Again, hate is not solved by, further divisions. I think that's the thing that somehow I just wish we could kind of get that point out there in general, just that this idea that we're going to solve either racism or hate or whatever by just constantly creating more divides and more people up against each other. That, how about respect, dignity, love,
Yeah.
all
It's
those
good
things.
to call it out, but let's not invent things and
Right.
to create more division
Right.
for politicized purposes. But let me just go back for a moment to what they specifically accuse the Family Foundation of, because that's kind of fascinating. They have a whole page devoted to the state of Virginia. We're going to highlight that page on here. You can see it on our YouTube viewers can see this. So you see the first thing mentioned here is Sage's Law. They've even got a picture of our Sage's Law press conference, and they've got, if you keep scrolling in the middle of the page, you will see a big picture of our Protect Every Kid initiative.
Yeah,
it's like a big banner there. So how did
But look
all
at those
that,
cute little kids with their signs.
They
I'm
are
sorry.
cute.
I'm like, how do you look at that and think
They're-
hate when you see these cute little
Yeah.
kids holding signs? But apparently they
well,
think
that's a good point.
whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that that's the picture. I don't know.
Yeah, we're proud of that picture.
Yes, I don't have it.
So how did all this, though, land us on the baddie list?
Well, because again, Sage's Law, I mean, let's just get to the heart of what was a story about a girl that was gender confused, found herself literally caught in sex trafficking, the whole 9 yards, and our law center helped bring her back to her parents. And the law is based after that story, which is that one of the big factors in all of that tragedy in her life is the fact that the school went along with her gender confusion and didn't share with her parents. And so her parents were left in the dark. And so we tried to pass a law that simply said, look, at the point at which a child wants the school to accommodate their pronouns or let them in a different bathroom, that's when a parent needs to be notified. And apparently, we know it caused quite a stir at the General Assembly, and the liberals were very opposed to it. And so the bottom line is our work on trying to really let parents know. It's really not anything other than that, but
I mean, as we've said a million times before, it's not even just the pronouns. They're actually leading a child down a path of gender transition and saying you should cut the parents out of that. And we're simply saying the parents should be put back in the process.
Yeah, and
that is not hate speech.
And our Protect Every Kids campaign was very much about the idea that you cannot make policies in a school to accommodate a certain percentage of kids and ignore the bodily privacy rights of all the rest of the kids. So that was really a campaign that we launched, generated around making sure that we don't have unsafe places for girls, which we obviously, unfortunately, have been proven that's necessary by things like what happened in the sexual assault situation in Loudoun County.
Yeah. I mean, the whole theme of Protect Every Kid is that you are going to best protect every single child in the school when more parents are involved, not less, because when you cut the parents out, it just opens the door for predators, for manipulation of kids. The parents help safeguard their kids' mind, heart, and body. That's the whole theme of Protect Every Kid.
And that used to not be very controversial.
Yeah.
Parent engagement was a good thing in public schools for a long, long time.
Yeah, a far cry from hate speech.
Right.
If you're saying parental rights is now hate speech, we have a big problem.
Right.
All
It
right.
kind of reminds me, I just have to say this. One time I was talking to somebody who I hadn't seen in a long time, and they found out I worked for the Family Foundation, and they literally said, like, any group with the name family and it's just a hate group. That was, like, the word family was, and now we've got, like, parents' rights is somehow hate.
That is such a good example.
So absurd.
Because they have twisted family values into hate values.
Anyway.
It's very Orwellian. So what's especially interesting about all this is how they actually use that hate label on the ground to silence not just groups like the Family Foundation or try to silence, but actual parents and board members who want to listen to those parents. And I've been able to see this up close and personal with the work we've been doing that Victoria mentioned with Protect Every Kid at multiple school boards across the state. And what I observe in person is how this hate label is whipped out. It's kind of like they shared the same memo across the state. Just call them all hate groups. And it's really a lazy way to silence people.
Oh, yeah, it's name calling. And we were taught when we were kids, like, this is
Yeah.
not appropriate. But, this is whatever. This is what they do.
Well, when you resort to name calling, you don't have to
You don't have to address the issues, the
respond
actual
to the actual
substantive
arguments
correct.
that the parents are making.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's a quick way to chill speech because people don't want to be on the recipient of name calling.
Yeah, it's also a way to intimidate, sideline people. So I think it's kind of a lazy way to, like you said, not have to meet the challenges that are being brought forth. Now, I just witnessed this tactic again the other day at the Newport News school board meeting. But before I get into that, I do want to give a shout out to our Speak Up Newport News team because I'm so proud of them. They brought parents out, pastors filled the room with concerned citizens wearing Protect Every Kid stickers. We're going to just flash a few images up here on the screen. And I'm just so proud also that we had clergy there from at least, I think, 10 different churches in the room. I mean, that represents hundreds of families. That sends a loud message. And here are some pictures of some of those pastors, or just one. I think we're going to flash up here of some of the pastors. But along the lines of the whole hate group label thing, what I see is how this is actually being used to shut down parents and pastors and target specific school board members if they're perceived as a person of faith. You know, people get up there and call them part of the hate group. So I'm just going to start off with this clip from this meeting the other night, and we'll let you see what you think.
On 1 August, all students, regardless of gender identity, will be able to join any club or activity they wish, except sports, for now. On 1 August, refusal to use pronouns as they request will be discriminatory. On 1 August, outing a child to their parents will subject a person to more than de minimis harm, and that will be discriminatory. On 1 August, JBP will qualify as hostile environment harassment. On 1 August, if the offender commits discrimination, Title IX protections will extend beyond the school, regardless of a location, even if outside the United States or in a church. Any student, parent, employee, or person participating in an education program or activity may make a complaint about sex-based harassment or discrimination. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride if JPP is still on the books on 1 August. After 31 July, the WOW Church will be another hate group with Doug Brown as a member, and any discriminatory policies will be linked to that, and that will be enforceable because outside of the school district based on Title IX. You have one more chance before 1 August, in July of course, to be the heroes that demand equality and support human rights before the federal government holds your hand and makes you do what you have been incapable of doing based on sound moral character.
All right. Well, I just want to make clear that the JBP policy that he keeps mentioning is just a parental rights policy that basically makes it clear that schools can't hide information from parents. I mean, that's the bottom line, essentially, especially when it comes to their kids experimenting with changing their gender identity at school. And the Newport News School District implemented these policies in response to parents who had come out and said, we want to be in the know to their concerns. And so now you've got the LGBTQ plus activists are, you know, they're just pressuring the board like crazy to reverse that. And I mean, we'll get into the August 1 threat that he keeps mentioning, you know, but first I just want to comment on him labeling an individual school board member and an entire church with almost 1,000 members a hate group.
Yeah. You know, as God would have it, though, Pastor Russell Evenson, who is the pastor of the church that this person was targeting, its World Outreach Worship Center, I just think providentially he happened to be, because I think they shuffle the cards with who's speaking. So as God would have it, he's up right after this guy. And if you listen to him, it is the opposite of hate. Let's just play that clip real quick.
Thank Dr. Mitchell and the school board for taking a stand with what we believe is to protect our children, kids, youth, parents, and their rights in these things, in these matters that we're discussing. I'm sorry Mr. Lee has labeled WOW Church a hate group. That's very far from the truth. We have folks that come from all walks of life, all cultures. We're very receptive, very open congregation. I'm sorry that he's turning this into what seems like a personal issue between us and Doug Brown. And so I apologize that he feels like that's what it is, but that's not who we are. We're a church, we're a congregation, we love people. You can go on our website, you can see the views that it's a very multicultural church. Young people, children, we're a family-oriented church. But I didn't come here to discuss that tonight, but since he made that comment, I'd just like to say something in reference to all of our congregation, which a number of them are here tonight. But it's not just us, it's not just one church. You heard from Reverend Ray Johnson, who is a leader of a coalition of 800 to 900 people within the congregations. Our church is a church of 800 to 900 people that love people. I just simply came here tonight to thank the school board for taking a stand and for adopting the policy model, and hope that you'll have the courage in the face of all of this to continue to stand strong. Thank you. Thank you.
I just love the way he exudes love. Like, I mean, he doesn't, he's the opposite of everything I think that this guy wants to make him out to be, but he's just expressing the love of God. And I also want to address the way the speaker and others that we've seen are trying to weaponize this federal regulation Title IX situation.
Yeah, tell us about that. What's going on with Title IX real quick, and how are they weaponizing it?
I mean, the bottom line is the Biden administration is trying to reinterpret the word sex to include, and the word gender to include gender identity. And so they're trying to basically force all these schools into transgender guidelines. And so this guy's trying to, tee that up to tell the school board they better get in line with the Biden administration. So
yeah, they're thinking, okay, we have something to pummel them with now.
Right.
We're going to get right up there. But we were ready for this.
Yes, I love the way you and we were prepared, and so I think we should play this clip of you countering that and sort of fleshing out what actually happened and what's going on in the court system.
As a vice president of the Family Foundation of Virginia, I represent thousands of parents right here in Newport News and also in the Peninsula area. And before I get started with my comments tonight, I just want to bring up the mention that was made of Title IX, which, by the way, was originally created to protect equal opportunity for girls' sports. But what hasn't been mentioned tonight is that several states, including Virginia, have successfully challenged the Biden administration's controversial and hotly debated interpretation of that regulation. They have challenged it, and they have won with an injunction. I'm looking at a headline from the Associated Press that came out yesterday reporting, quote, Biden's Title IX rule blocked by judge for 6 more states, including Virginia. That is a federal court decision. So actually, it would be irresponsible and possibly against Virginia law, illegal under current Virginia law, for the school board to follow that Title IX interpretation, which is still being fleshed out in the court systems.
Okay, so just coming out of that, I just want to say right off the bat, all of us here at the Family Foundation feel exactly the same, that if we're going to take the heat for standing up for parents and saying basic truth like I was able to say and help the school board not be threatened, I will wear that as a badge of honor. All of us feel that way. If we're taking heat for defending life and religious freedom and parents, we'll do that all day. We will be unashamed of it.
Yeah, and I'm just proud of the way our team goes in and represents, the moms and dads are there themselves, the pastors are there themselves, but I do think it helps to kind of come in with, I don't know that everybody's paying attention to the fact that there was a court case that basically countered the Biden, that put it on hold. So I'm glad we're there just as a policy arm to kind of have that kind of resource.
That is how we try to support parents on the ground, because they aren't going to be privy to all of that, minute by minute.
And they're sitting there for 4 to 5 hours.
Yeah.
They do hard work by coming to these school board meetings. And so I think it just being there with the resources so that their work isn't in vain, that they're not, that some guy, spouting off about the Biden administration doesn't win the day in there.
Right, exactly. Well, I do have good news from that whole evening. Parental rights did win out. Rather than backing away from the good parent-friendly policies they had already implemented, they did the opposite of that and basically strengthened the superintendent's ability to respond to parents. So I think the parents can be encouraged that their voice was heard, that they helped strengthen the school board to not back away from that. So I'm happy to report a victory in that. But I think at the end of the day, we just got to realize these attempts to smear and stigmatize people of faith, standing up for biblical principles, standing up to protect kids, it's going to continue. It's not going to lessen. I think we're all going to have to make that choice at some level because it's getting harder and harder to just sit it out on the sidelines. We're all going to have to make the choice whether we are willing to be called a bigot for biblical principles.
I think the reality is that the middle ground that used to be where we could kind of meet people and go, well, we can both agree on parental rights. That to me, that was a middle ground thing. Like, we might disagree about what a child feels and whether that should be validated, but we should all agree parents have the rights. That used to be the middle ground. I don't think that exists anymore, and that's sad. But I think your point is well made, that because rational sort of middle ground doesn't exist, or it's really hard to find in these situations, people are going to have to be willing to kind of stand up. And I think that, we sort of named our year-end campaign No Middle Ground because that's what we're seeing and feeling, and it makes our job a little bit harder, but it's important that we're kind of able to help fortify people to go, nope, now I'm going to have to take a stand. Like, I can't, there's no sort of like easy spot to land where everybody's just going to agree.
Yeah, and like we said, we don't mind taking the incoming on behalf of parents, on behalf of religious freedom. But if you want to get involved and help counter these efforts to defund us, to stigmatize us, put us on the sidelines, an easy way for you to do that is help us with our year-end fundraising campaign. Tell us a little bit more about that, how they can just do something right now.
Yeah, I mean, our website's the easiest place to go, familyfoundation.org, and you'll see a banner, No Middle Ground. If you want to kind of support these efforts, of especially like the Speak Up teams and the resources we can give on the ground to groups, that's a great way to do it. And it just helps us meet our year-end budget goal so that we end up kind of starting square when we get into the new year, because we really do want to keep growing these Speak Up teams, and we want to keep building on what we've been able to do with helping them be able to fight their local battles.
All right. Don't let groups like SPLC be the final word on this. Go in. You can register your support. As Victoria mentioned, No Middle Ground. Just look for the big banner at familyfoundation.org. Thank you so much for your support and for joining us today. Remember, we are stronger when we speak together. We'll see you next time.